I have understood. I have seen people on Facebook say such messages like, "Hey, come and join me," but put the link then in the message. Is that something that is on purpose because of the way that Facebook works?
Like they put it in the comment below?
Yeah.
Yep. It does help a little bit with the algorithm. So they'll say like link is in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does help a little bit. It's not as big as it used to be though.
Ah, okay. Okay, well, turn off Facebook and then we can start. Okay, well, that's good to know. Deep breath. All right, great. So we are live again on Become a Fearless Father show, and last live interview of the week. It's the 7th one this week, and it is for me the biggest one this week, and I am very excited. I had decided a couple of months ago that once every 50 live interviews, I want to have a fearless mother on the show. And I got it right here. Rachel Pedersen, thank you so much for being on. You represent exactly what I see as a fearless father, but then as a mother.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I love the idea of being a fearless mother or father. Obviously, I don't know what it's like to be a fearless father, but if it's anything like being a fearless mother, it's pretty cool. So thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about one of the things that made me, more than your being the social media queen, as I've understood, I want to talk about one story later on in regards to your airplane story, as I call it. I love that story, and it baffled me, so to say. So we're definitely diving into that. But first of all, what I've seen from you, because I see you everywhere, that's one. What is your secret to success on both life and work? Because I've noticed people are struggling to make both work. And you are, for me, one of the biggest examples that seems to make it work on both ends.
Ooh, I love that question. So one of the things that's really interesting, and I just shared a post about this, I think yesterday. This week's been really long, so I'm like, which day was it that I shared that? I think it was yesterday when I talked about saying no more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that's really interesting that I noticed is it kind of seemed like a lot of people assumed that my post, which I'll give you guys kind of a recap of it. Basically, I shared that for years I've been saying yes to a lot. I say yes. I've said yes for 3 years to almost every single opportunity that's been in front of me, to travel, to speaking, to Facebook Lives, to writing book chapters, to giving away courses, like all of this crazy stuff. I've been saying a lot of yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that saying yes is a huge part of the process. And now I'm going into a phase of my life and my business where I am, after years of establishing the yes, it's time for me to start saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really, really weird for me. But one thing I noticed, like in the comments about it, was it seemed that a natural assumption was that meant that my family didn't get any time from me, or that I've been an absentee mom, or that, I don't spend time with my husband. And I'll be honest, there aren't many things in my life that get my priority.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about like wanting to make more time for my family, it actually means my extended family. It means my sisters, my in-laws, my nieces and nephews. There are only a couple things, because we don't have unlimited time in the world. And I am somebody that loves to work. I really, really enjoy working. But I also really, really love my kids and my husband. And so I keep my priorities really close and tight. I spend hours with my kids almost every single night except for Mondays. Every single night I spend hours with my kids and my husband. Right now we aren't in a phase where we're able to make date night happen, but that's part of what we're doing with the next phase. But we're able to take trips together. We connect every single day. My husband and my kids have been a priority, if not parallel with, maybe even more so than my business. But everything else has had to take a back seat. And so a lot of times people think like, oh, you can keep everything perfectly balanced, and that isn't true. But I think sometimes we accidentally let things take the driver's seat in our lives. And a lot of people do this with like Netflix binging mindlessly, scrolling Facebook at night,
Mm.
going to things that you don't enjoy. And
Mm.
so if something wasn't in my business with my kids or with my husband, those were the only things that I said no to. So it means I said a lot of yes in my business, a lot of yes to my kids, a lot of yes to my husband, and then a couple of close friends that feel like family.
Mhm.
But I wasn't able to prioritize everything. So as crazy as it is, that those were my three major priorities. And so if anyone's wondering, like, how did she do it all? I didn't exercise. I didn't take on any hobbies. I didn't go to any movies hardly at all in movie theaters. It was just kids, husband, business. That's it for
Mhm.
years.
Exactly. So that is kind of, as you can call it, a secret, the secret, right? Just having clear view of what are my priorities at this moment in time, right? Knowing that they can change,
Yep.
and then focusing fully on that. All right, that makes
Yep.
a lot of sense. I've been working on that as well, and it's helped a lot because, well, as you know, I think you work from home sometimes as well. Your kids come in and they want something, and then it's like, that's where impatient behavior comes from. Unless you have that priority clear, it's like, okay, kids first, or partner first, whatever you choose, right? And then after that comes work if necessary. I like that. I appreciate you sharing that. So now for all the people watching, share us your origin story. Who is Rachel Pedersen? How did you get here? Who started calling you the social media queen? And of course, as a standpoint of a fearless father, I would love to hear your family setup as well.
For sure. So my origin story kind of starts back when I was like 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked social media a lot. I actually liked social media back when I was like 13. I was big into like MySpace and coding my profile and picking my top 8 and putting the frames around them. And I learned how to just a little bit code some HTML so I could have a really cool profile with the right music and all of that. But then when I turned 18 or 19 was when I started to see something really different happen. So I started to reach out to people on Twitter. I had a Twitter profile way back then, which is so crazy because it's like 12 years later. And I started reaching out to people that were like reality TV show stars and reality TV show producers. And the crazy thing is they were replying.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this just kind of crazy moment where I was like, you mean to tell me that like social media makes this accessible? Like that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen because I hadn't really left Minnesota much. I grew up not in a small town, but like in Minnesota, things are very like you stay in the same city that you grew up in, you go to college, you get married right after college, you have 2.5 kids, you drive a minivan, you get a 4-bedroom house, 2 bathrooms. It's just everything is very similar because that's just kind of the way of life of Minnesota as a whole. And I didn't ever really realize that there was access to something totally different. So what Twitter opened my eyes to is this idea that social media could connect me with totally different people. That was like mind blowing for me. That was one of the craziest things ever. And so that was my first like real like kind of aha of there's something with this social media thing. I'll kind of go through the backstory a little bit fast because it's crazy. So at 21, I was a college dropout.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't agree very much with the college structure and I really struggled with it. And so I dropped out of college and all of a sudden I found myself a single mom. And at 21, college dropout, no career, no significant other. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And at that time, I had to figure something out. So I decided to go to hair school, but you don't make money while you're going to school doing hair. Occasionally you'll make tips or whatever. And so I was on welfare and food stamps. And so I was on welfare, food stamps, renting 1 bedroom with my daughter and I. and just working so hard to try to make the best we could out of the situation. And I hustled while I was in hair school. I mean, I just was like, if I can get a job offer from one of the top salons in Minnesota, life will never look the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I hustled. And within 1 week of submitting resumes, I had 5 job offers from the top 5 salons, all 5 that I wanted. I got them all.
Nice.
It was really, really crazy. I was freaking out. It was an amazing moment, and I got to pick which one I wanted to work for. And so I started to be a hairdresser.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along that path, I met my husband. We got married 13 days later. After a meeting, I knew he was the one. And then something really crazy happened, and that was that I started building my business on social media a little bit. And a client came in, and she just wanted some support with her social media. So I figured, like, I'm not an expert in social media, but I know more than her, so I think I can help her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my first jump into marketing, and I jumped into marketing from there. I quit the salon, and it's kind of, the rest is history.
Nice. Oh, what a history.
There was a part 2 to that question. What was it? The parenting setup, or?
Yeah, exactly. What does your family consist of at the moment? Because I think I saw pictures with 3 kids, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it's my husband and I.
Mm-hmm.
We have an 8-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So it's all across the board with ages, and we are done having kids, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that we're done. That era of babies is over. I love it. I love my kids, but I'm so excited because now we get to enjoy them growing into really cool people.
Exactly. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing that origin story.
Sure.
I actually have one question, because as I mentioned right before we start the live, hey, I'm very nervous. I've blown this up in for myself before we started. And I was just wondering, because I saw videos and pictures of you with some of, if I would be with that people, that would be like the same. I'd be very nervous. Gary Vee, Russell Brunson, etc. How was that for you the first times? And if you had nervousness, or maybe if you're in situations of being nervous, I was just wondering, how do you make sure that those nerves help you instead of hurt you?
Ooh, I love that question. So I think my moments of nervousness are different than other
Mm-hmm.
people's moments of nervousness. Um, so I'll dive into kind of what that means in just a second, but first I'll answer your question about, like, how do you handle nerves? For me, because I do have moments where I get really nervous. I usually have, like, about 1 hour before I speak. Anytime I speak, I have the nerves that hit really hard,
Mm-hmm.
even though speaking is one of my favorite things. But by the time I'm on stage, I'm not scared. I'm not nervous, anything like that. And I literally have started to train my brain to recognize nervousness as
Mm-hmm.
excited. Like, I'm not stressed. I'm not nervous. This is like a rush of adrenaline. This is my body prepping. This is like a fighter about to enter the cage. My whole team knows that every time, it doesn't matter if there's 5 people or if there's 4,500 people. Literally, the moment that like 1 hour before I'm about to hop on, is that moment where those nerves hit, and I look at them. Okay, I go, okay, I'm nervous. Nope, I'm excited. And so then we get pumped up. We listen to music. I start actually sharing with them the things I'm most excited about in my speech. I am not someone who likes to overly rehearse my talks. I like to actually go off the cuff. It's one of my favorite things to do. But I don't get nervous when it comes to meeting most people. There have only been a couple times where I've lost my cool when it comes to meeting someone. I absolutely lost my cool when it came to seeing Celine Dion in concert. That was like, there are only probably 5 people in this world where I would get really nervous meeting them, maybe 10 max. And these are like the greats that I think are just legendary. And I don't want to meet them until I've really practiced in my head what it looks like. The crazy thing is, like, from the time I started, I imagined the moments when I would meet Russell Brunson, and I imagined the moments when I would meet Gary Vaynerchuk, and when I would accept my 2 Comma Club award. I imagined all of those moments so often that it wasn't like it was the first time happening. I felt like I had already met Russell, and I felt like I had already met Gary. And a lot of these things I had put on vision boards and on goals and on bucket lists and all of these things. So when they happened, it didn't catch me off guard because I had literally been like, oh yeah, that's going to happen. Like, I feel like this has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, there's probably 10 people who, when I meet them, it's going to be, if I haven't prepared it in my head. So I want to make sure that I, prepare it before I ever have to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
There's only about 10 people where I might lose my cool. And seeing Celine Dion in concert was one of those. So we were in row 5, and when she came out for the encore and we heard the boat from Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
and then we started to hear the flute. I lost it. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like total fangirl. But she's on my list of 10 people. So one of the things that really does help me is recognizing that other people sometimes get nervous to meet me. Mm-hmm. And I'm a normal person. You know what I mean? Like, obviously there's some really cool things that have happened, but I'm still a normal person. You know what I mean? Like, I make coffee, I wake up in the morning, my kids, sometimes throw temper tantrums in the morning. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that's like that different about my life except for maybe the circumstances of things. Mm-hmm. And so when I imagine like the people that I admire and I imagine their life being a little bit like mine, it makes them feel like normal people. Mm-hmm. And it kind of takes away that nervousness a little bit. So does that help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Great tips. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, it was a question of a queen that came in my head because of the situation. So I appreciate you sharing that. Go ahead.
You asked, how did the title of Queen of Social Media come about? Because I think that was packed into the first question. It just came back to me. It was a while back when we were doing the expert. I think this was during the Expert Secrets launch. Mm-hmm. And I really like Game of Thrones. So I had someone Photoshop my face onto a picture of Daenerys. Mm. And we put across it Expert Secrets, Mother of Social Media. So originally it was Mother of Social Media instead of Mother of Dragons. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how that was going to go, but I ran it as an ad to just test it and see if it would work. And someone actually grabbed the photo, printed it out on a card, and wrote inside of it Queen of Social Media. Mm-hmm. And I put that on my Facebook profile, and somebody wrote out this whole, like, are you familiar with Game of Thrones?
Yeah, absolutely. We were watching the we're starting over watching it.
So good. So I put it on my profile, and someone created this whole like chant. I think it was like either John Buchanan. I think it was John Buchanan, but I'm gonna have to double check that. And he wrote Queen of Social Media, Mother of the Social Media Managers, Breaker of Poverty. And he like wrote out this whole thing. And it was just so funny. And that first line, like, it just kind of stuck. And I was like, I'm going to see what happens if I use that once. And I used it once and it just stuck. And I was like, you know what? I don't hate that. So we'll just go with that. That works. And that's how the name happened.
Awesome. I love it. So thank you for sharing that. Coming back to that, that's pretty immersive. So after that impromptu question of mine, let's talk a little bit about social media more. So I'm wondering, because I'm struggling, like I'm focused on Facebook and on YouTube, and the thing I'm struggling with, and of course that's, props for Facebook, for example. As soon as you go on Facebook, they know exactly what to show you to make sure that you start scrolling and you stay on it. So instead of using it as, a benefit for my business, I get stuck and I lose time, or let's say wasting at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, what are tricks that you have learned that minimize falling into that social media trap?
Great question, because I spend a lot of time on social media, so it could be really easy to spend all of my time lost. Mm-hmm. Now, here's one thing that's really interesting. It was probably maybe 2 years ago, when I got really, really, really serious. Like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to play small. I'm going to go really hard after my dreams. I believe that anything is possible. I'm going to make this happen. But that requires some sacrifice. That requires me saying, do I want to scroll on Pinterest? Do I want to scroll through my Facebook feed? Or do I want to build the business of my dreams? Mm-hmm. And every time I thought about it that way, I started to kind of hate wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am not a fan of wasting time most of the time. Now, I'm going to real fast differentiate one thing. I believe that if you are going to do something, you should do it with intention. So if you're going to go on YouTube to watch entertaining videos, just be aware that you're not actually learning, and recognize that you're taking time to disconnect and watch entertaining videos and be conscious of it. Like, just be honest with yourself about it. I really love video games. I really enjoy watching TV and movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time that we put on a show, I ask myself, like, is this a show I want to watch with intention and really sit down and focus and unplug? Or is this something that I really don't care about and I could multitask during this and like work out? That's a joke. I don't work out. In a perfect world, I could work out during the show. Is it something I could, answer questions on Facebook during? Is it something I could sketch something out while I'm watching this in the background? I ask myself, like, is this something I want to unplug for? Is this worthy of my attention? Or is this something that is really a waste of time?
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps me to not waste time. So if you're going to just sit and scroll in your feed, make sure that you're conscious of the time that you're spending doing that, because you could spend all day on Facebook feeling like, oh, I got to look for that next post, that good next post. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I find is if I'm not building like relationships, like encouraging my friends when I'm scrolling through my feed, mm-hmm. and I'm looking for controversial topics or posts that I don't agree with or something like that, that to me is a sign time's up, stop. Mm-hmm. Because it's no longer being something beneficial. It's not being what it's supposed to be, which is a connector. Time to shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's great advice. Yeah, absolutely. Always try to be conscious of what you're doing. But again, that's the props for Facebook, right? It's amazing how they know exactly like which post will make them sure that I will keep going. Great. So thanks for sharing that. One of the things that you mentioned, like at a certain point, it just popped off for you. What has been your growth strategy on Facebook? Yeah.
Great question. No one's going to like this answer because everyone wants the tip or the trick. And my growth strategy on Facebook has been doing the legwork, delivering tons of value. And I know that sounds really fluffy, but it's actually not. If you really dive into what delivering value is, it comes down to serving people with responses, serving people with answers, serving people with posts that maybe have the opportunity to meet a need because it served you in some way. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of it. Building relationships on Facebook has been a huge part of it's not even a growth strategy. It's just building this really strong network. I have a lot of people who have become friends on Facebook in real life, off of the world of the internet, because I really care about building relationships, and that's been huge. I mean, it's doing the legwork that a lot of people aren't willing to do. So many people are looking for that tip or that trick or that use these 9 words and grow like crazy, and that's not what it comes down to. I wish it was. Like, I so wish that I could come on here and be like, this one trick will totally like double your followers overnight, but there just isn't one. And I've noticed that it's usually like every single year I've been shocked to see how many people drop off, give up, stop growing, stop serving, stop staying in alignment with their core values. Their core values shift, or they allow themselves to get kind of on the wrong path compared to what their highest self desires. So, it was right around 2 years where I started to really see this massive drop off of all the people I started with. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard. It was hard to see them give up. It was hard to see them accepting playing small. It was hard to see them saying like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. When I was like, what do you mean? Like, I have those same fears every single day, but it's interesting because I believe that, like, I don't even know if I would necessarily consider myself fearless, because there still is sometimes fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like fearless could almost be a synonym for being brave in the face of fear and taking it head on and being like, you know, yeah, I get that you're scared. Yeah, I know that you think it might not work. But you know what? I have those thoughts too.
Mm-hmm.
And we have two choices. You can either give up or, you know, keep going. And so I watched it 2 years. A ton of people gave up, and there was very few people that I started the journey with left. And then at 3 years, there was a small handful of us, maybe 5 of us out of the initial, 100 or 200 people that I had connected.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me just showed that you have to just keep going,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to do the hard work.
Exactly. Yeah. So what you're saying is consistency is the key. And sometimes I want, because consistency is the key, okay. But what you noticed, right? People have been consistent for a year and then all of a sudden drop off.
Mm-hmm.
So people are starting to wonder, yeah, okay, so how long do you have to be consistent, right? Um, any tip on that?
For sure. Um, I have been very consistent
Mhm.
for 3 years, and that's not across every single platform.
Mhm.
There are certain platforms that I've been very consistent on for years. There are some that go in waves at times, and then I take breaks with different seasons. But consistently across the board, most people know, like, you're going to see my name in my face across somewhere, right? You're going to run into me. Like it or hate it, I'm there.
Mhm.
Um, so just being visible as a whole in consistency is like, I don't know, around 1 year, you can start to see some results. Around 2 years, you can start to see like some real breakthrough. And around 3 years, and this is not a formula, this is
Mhm.
just something I've noticed as a pattern. Around 3 years, you start to see like, okay, this is really starting to pay off. And I can only imagine after 5 years, you're like, okay, like most of the competition's gone. After 10 years, I can only imagine it's like you come in with wisdom and expertise and experience, and you've seen people go through situations, you've experienced situations, you've cycled.
Mhm.
And I'm only 3 years in, which is so crazy to me. I'm excited for 5 years. I'm excited for 10 years. I'm excited to have more expertise under my belt, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And is that the trick then? Because you mentioned like you've been on more social medias and trying to be consistent. Is that the thing? Like, should you be on? Because that's one of the things that I'm worried about. Is like I'm focused on Facebook and YouTube, but then I hear people talking about Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest, and it's like, should I also start doing that, or is focus good? What's your advice on that?
Ooh, I am going to say something a little bit different than what most people say.
Mm-hmm.
The best platform is the one that you're consistent on. There
Mm-hmm.
are some people, most people would say like Twitter's dead. There are some people who are still crushing it on Twitter. There are still people who are crushing it on Snapchat. There are like, it's just so crazy to me to realize that like there's no such thing as a right or a wrong platform. Obviously there are some that are going to be maybe better suited for your business, but
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that supersedes a platform that you're consistent on. So the right platform is the platform you're consistently showing up on.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool part is you get to kind of pick. So how do I pick which platforms? It's pretty easy. I don't go on any of the platforms I don't like. So I focus on the platforms I really, really, really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's enough of those that we are able to be really present everywhere. Like I never liked Snapchat, so I didn't really go for it. I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. But like Facebook, I always like it. Twitter, I have fun with Twitter. TikTok's awesome. I love YouTube. Pinterest is wonderful. My emails, blogs, podcasts, Facebook Lives, I like all those.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better to be incredibly consistent on one platform and ultimately shift that traffic to a platform that you own as fast as you can,
Mm-hmm.
like email list, text message list, Rolodex, whatever you want to call it. It's more important to be consistent on one or two platforms than to be sporadic on all platforms.
Excellent. Great. I appreciate that. So, and then I'm wondering, how are you using, because of course, social media is great, but you want to grow your business, you want to grow your impact even more, you want to grow your income, right? What has been your strategy, or what's your approach to make sure that you grow your business thanks to the support of social media?
Ooh, being visible. Being super visible. That's the best strategy I've used across
Mm-hmm.
all platforms. And it was about 3 years ago that no, I'm sorry. It goes back to when I was 18 or 19 on Twitter. And for some reason, when I started to tweet these like producers and reality show stars, I was like, oh my gosh, they know who I am. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you might be like, okay, anyone watching this might be like, okay, Rachel, they don't know who you are. They responded to your tweet. No, like we had like Twitter conversations going all the time. And I ended up like messaging with a lot of them, got some of their emails, and ended up being like friends with some of them and pen pals for years, which is so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I realized like from social media, people could recognize my name and my face, that at 18 or 19, even though I didn't implement it for, geez, 8 years, 9 years, yeah, somewhere in there. I don't even know how old I am now. I didn't implement it again for 8 or 9 years, but then one day I realized, oh yeah, if I can get people to know my name and my face, magical things happen, and I don't know how to connect all the dots. So that's been like my main strategy, is get them to know my name and my face.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Great. I appreciate that. I'm trying to see what time it is, because I also want to, yeah, let's dive into the other part, which is important. It's not just the only business that I want to talk to you about. As I mentioned, for me, you represent the fearless mother. And I appreciate earlier on, you already mentioned like fear doesn't mean, or fearless doesn't mean living without fear. It doesn't for me either. It just means that I look at fear in a different way and turn courageous or brave, however you want to call it. You just hit the nail on the head right there. So I don't have to ask that question. What I do want to ask, I want to talk about a little bit. I read your post in regards to the airplane story, where you mentioned that a man told you you shouldn't sit. And if you want to explain the story, you explain it better than I do. But you shouldn't be sitting at the emergency exit, right?
Yeah, so I was on a plane ride. I think I was on my way to, I want to say Miami. And on the way to Miami, I upgraded to the exit row seat because who doesn't like that extra room? And oftentimes I book like last minute flights. So it's like the second I get the opportunity to upgrade with some legroom, I'm like, yes, please. So
Mm.
I was in the exit row, and this guy sitting behind me says loudly to the flight attendant who's standing and kind of talking to me. And I don't remember the exact words because I haven't even told that story since I made that post. But he
Mm.
said something along the lines of like, I don't know if she's going to be strong enough to assist us in case of an emergency. And I like looked back because I was like, he can't be talking about me. And I said, I've got 3 kids. Like, I'm plenty strong. Thank you. And he said, you've got 3 kids, like something like, where are you going? And I said, I'm on a business trip. And I'm good. Thank you. And he said, there was like a little dialogue back and forth, but I think he asked something like, do you travel a lot? Like, and I said, yeah, I travel quite a bit. And then he said, oh, you travel quite a bit. You must not make much time for your kids.
Wow.
And it was just so crazy to me, like hearing so many in a row judgments of someone
Mm.
who wanted so badly to put me into a bubble because they didn't understand like me or why I travel or why I have 3 kids and that's what my life looks like. It's really interesting because at that time I was really like annoyed. I wasn't mad. I was kind of just like, okay, like, thank you. Sit down. Let me just read my books. But the interesting thing is like the more we've processed kind of that in similar situations, I realized that his statements and questions had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with him trying to get a grasp on the way the world works and what he knows to be true. And so it was really interesting because I probably could have used it as a learning lesson, but I don't think I want to take the time to really engage much with strange men when I don't have my husband traveling with me, just for safety and security reasons. But he travels now with me everywhere I go, just because of that and because of other crazy things that sometimes happen. So yeah, it was really, really crazy. And it irked me a little bit, only because I was like, don't put your limitations on me. Like, I could probably, I could fireman carry you, sir, because I know this. I've fireman carried a lot of people. But it was just a really interesting experience, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it stood out for me as so much because, well, I've been raised very different apparently, and I don't have those judgments, especially not towards women. My mother actually kept her own last name, even though she's married for years and years and years. She's very strong in that. She taught me that. And when I wrote, I'm like, wow, are we still there? Like, are we still that backwards that we have to judge women in such a way? And what then was my question as well was, because if that would happen to me, that would bother me for days. So how do you make sure that something like that and doesn't, like you mentioned already, something very important is like, I start putting me in his shoes, right? I understood like, okay, it's not me, it's him. He's trying to understand it. But do you have like a trick or what do you do to make sure that that doesn't bother you too long?
That's a really good question. I think the more that you put yourself out there and are visible,
Mm-hmm.
more attacks and hate and trolls and criticism you get. And I've had a lot over the years. I mean, everything from the way that I talk, to the way that I look, the way I do my makeup, the things that I'm saying, I must be stupid, I must be a bad mom. Like, there's so many. And it bothered me a lot at first, but then something just kind of clicked where I was like, this is always going to be there. And when I look at like celebrities' Instagram accounts, I see how much love there is and how much hate there is. And I realized if you want to grow to be in a place of massive proportions, you have big goals, you gotta suck it up, buttercup. You just at some point have to say, I can't feel bad for myself anymore, because if I let this rattle me, then I am not able to go on to the next level. Because the next level has more criticism. The next level has more comments and opinions and judgments and advice and all of that. Occasionally I'll respond and try to, give grace. Sometimes I'll be tongue in cheek back. But you really, I would just say, like, put yourself out there and experience it enough and make your goal to get to the place where it doesn't bother you anymore. So that was like a big goal for me. It really helped me to look at really successful people's social media accounts. And that helped me to see, like, they get it even more than I do. So if I really want what they have, that is going to come with the territory.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. It has been very hard for me in the beginning because I have another business where we have tons of following and people then start to hate. And it's like 10 people love you, one person hates you, and you focus on the one that hates you. It's so weird. So I appreciate you sharing this. It's very important to keep that in mind. Now, I saw a picture. I love that picture. All of you in The Incredibles outfits. I got so excited. I loved it. I'm like, that's so exactly fun. Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I was talking about with Armando Cruz. And he was telling me, and I picked up on that immediately. It's not about how much time you spend. It's just when you spend time, create experiences. And I saw that picture. I'm like, it seems like somebody else got that and is creating an experience. Tell me a little bit or share, how do you go about creating these kind of experiences for your kids? Because yeah, they're the most important things that we can do, I think.
I agree with the idea of it's not how much time we spend, it's the quality
Mm-hmm.
to an extent. Because there are some people who will just say like, I'll spend the weekends with my kids and that's quality time,
Mm-hmm.
which there's no shame in anything. But I will say, when I recognize that like my kids are learning every single day, they're either learning from me or they're learning from someone else, or they're learning from YouTube, or they're learning from Netflix, or the books that they're reading, they're learning. And so if I don't take the time, this is at least my philosophy, if I don't take the time every day to have great conversations with them, we do family dinner like every single almost every single night, but we usually either do family dinner or we play video games together, or sometimes we try to get the kids to bed early and end up spending an hour like doing like dance parties and taco fights and all of that. We do have some really fun experiences. I will say experiences are more for weekends when I can unplug and we've got 6 hours. I really like taking our kids on adventures and trying new things. So that's kind of what I use the weekends for, is like, let's create an adventure that is harder for me to do after a long day's work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I handle that. I really like spending at least 2 hours every night with the kids. We usually spend 2 to 3 hours solid with the kids, with our phones away, computers away. So as you can tell, like I don't have much of a social life outside of my business. So that's why it helps that I work with a lot of my friends and my kids and my husband. And that's okay for this season of life. How do we come up with crazy adventures? I'm very goofy, super, super, super goofy by nature. When we saw the Incredibles movie, I literally, there was this moment, because like, I think, like I've always wanted to be like a cool mom in some way, but then all of a sudden I just realized like I'm a mom and I think I'm cool. So dang it, I'm just a mom. And when I was watching The Incredibles 2, I was watching it, I was like, Mrs. Incredible is the coolest person. I want to be just like her, like Elastigirl. She's amazing. And so as I was watching it, I was like, okay, I've become a real mom. Like I am a mom. And that was kind of a weird moment for me. But then I realized, oh, we should do that as our costumes for Halloween. And so we bought the costumes in all of our sizes and it worked out perfectly. And it was like, let's do this year. And now we're going to start doing more and more outrageous family costumes every year that we can, because that was so much fun and the kids loved it. They got excited. I'm going to do it until they don't think it's cool anymore. So I'm excited about all of our adventures.
Awesome. Yeah, and hopefully that day will never come.
I hope
Right?
so too.
It will come, but hopefully never. So besides that, let me ask you one last question. I'm going to ask the people that are with us if they have any questions for you as well. One of the things that stood out for me as well is just the way you talk about your husband online, the photos that I see and everything. What would be some of what would be like, let's say, like the major tip for couples out there, married couples with kids, to make sure that they stay connected with their partner?
This is a really good one. A good question. So I will say that I stay away from giving much marriage advice for one major reason,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not my zone of expertise. I'm an expert in, or becoming an expert in, our relationship, even though it's still pretty new. We've only been married for 5.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So as a rule, like people ask me a lot for marriage advice and I'm like, I can't give that to you. That'd be like me trying to give you financial advice, even though I figured out what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not touching that, because that's your life and your livelihood and your future and your kids' future. So I don't really touch marriage advice, but I'll give 2 pieces of information that have really, really served me well.
Mm-hmm.
That is, first and foremost, that our marriage is the most important thing in our lives. It is more important than our kids. It is more important than our business. It is more important than our house. Our marriage is something that, in my belief, honors God. I'm not saying everyone has to get married or has to follow a certain way. I'm just saying that, like, for us, loving each other well is one of the greatest acts of love and faith. And that's like that's honestly our number one priority. And it has been for a while. And I love that. But how did we get there? That's probably the question. Everyone's like, well, that sounds easy. Do you what is there 1, 2, 3 steps? We couldn't do it without the help of mentors. And so we work with Stacey Martino. I feature her sometimes like on my podcast or on my page. I talk about her quite a bit. And I just have to say, like, she made it so easy. Her and her husband, Paul, his name's Paul too. I'm always like, all the good ones are named Paul. So they transformed our understanding of how to put each other first. And that transformed our kids, that transformed our business, that transformed our happiness. So we really prioritized what they taught us, and that allowed us to prioritize us first. So the 2 tips I have are that my marriage being priority number 1 has been like a game changer for our whole lives. And number 2, how do you do that? Stacey Martino, she's the only relationship expert that I've ever met who has changed everything forever, which is crazy.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate that. Great. And I like your honesty, openness, directly saying, yeah, I'm not that expert, so I don't want to give advice on that. That's honesty. And I appreciate that, because as human beings, we so have the urgency or innately want to, give advice, right? I sometimes trap myself or feel like, I'm giving advice, but am I the right person to do this? So I really appreciate that. And what I like here as well is that you mentioned, like, I got a mentor for that, right? I see so many people that don't have a mentor and keep struggling and try to figure out themselves. However, there's a mentor or somebody that knows, that's an expert, and that you can take advantage of, right? So I really appreciate that. And we're getting close. I'm just checking real quick if anybody in this group has a question. If not, I can keep going. I mean, I got questions for days. One of the things that I would like to ask is, because 3 kids, husband, incredible business, how do you plan? What's your strategy on planning either your days or your weeks? How do you get your whole planning set up? Because now you just mentioned in that post, like, okay, I'm going for my next platform. That means you must have had some sort of planning ready to, like, I want to aim for this, and then I go. How do you set that up for yourself?
Ooh, I think it's a work in progress all the time, because even though I planned to grow to this place in my business, I think there was equal parts like belief and like not actually realizing that it could happen, if that makes sense. And so there was almost like a realistic side that was like, worst case scenario, it doesn't happen, and then I go back to my 9 to 5. That sounds a lot more glamorous than how it really sounds. It's more like, what if this all falls apart? And we all know how that goes. There's that side of it, but then there's also the side that's like, am I crazy enough to believe that this can happen and actually act on that belief? And so there's both of those sides. I will say that mentors have been a huge part. So I, at any given time, usually have like 3 to 5 mentors, and they help me with kind of seeing what the next phase looks like. I do pretty good at setting goals for myself, but I also learned that revenue-based goals aren't enough. We're in a phase of our business right now and our lives where having businesses that serve us and serve people well and serve our team to grow so that everyone is growing and everyone is benefiting, that is so much more important to me at this point than revenue. And so that's kind of one of our plans right now. And as weird as it is, I kind of feel like that's going to actually cause us to skyrocket. And I just don't really know how to handle it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so excited about it. So it's just like, let's just do that. Let's just serve people. Let's just continue to grow. Let's just continue to help others to grow when they ask for our help. And somehow I kind of think that we're going to hit our revenue goals along the way. That sounds really like I don't plan, but I don't know. I just have this really strong gut feeling about that.
That's awesome. What's the plan? We're going to go for the next, what is it then? The XX.
Yeah. I will be so excited when that day comes, because I know that means that we did a lot of things well with the plan I just shared. Now, here's the crazy thing, because you might think that I'm saying like, oh, I don't want revenue. No, I love revenue. I think revenue is great. I think money is awesome. It's just a resource. I will say that if we implement the level of serving people that I believe is possible, I don't see how we could not grow to the 2CCX. And so when it happens, I'm going to be so excited, because it's going to represent that we took the plan that was a weird gut feeling and went for it. And then all of a sudden, some crazy way, some crazy how it happened. So I'll be excited for when I get to upgrade this wall, and that'll be so fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely rooting for you.
Thank you.
We've been on an hour, almost. I really appreciate it. Rachel, for all those fearless fathers that are watching right now, or listening to the recording, or watching the recording, how can they follow you, contact you, learn from you, ask questions, whatever it is?
Great question. So there are two places you can find me, either on my website, rachelpedersen.com, and that's all E's and a D in my last name. And you can also find me on any social media platform as the Mrs. Pedersen, all E's and a D in my last name. So
awesome. I really appreciate it. So again, Rachel, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for being you. All my nerves are gone from the first minute you started talking to me. So I really appreciate that. It's been a blessing to have you on. I appreciate everybody that's been watching this. Thank you for spending an hour of your time listening, and I hope you got tons of value. I got tons of value. I've written tons of stuff down that I'm going to implement very soon. So again, thank you very much. Everybody else, have a fantastic rest of the day. Make it a Fearless Friday, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye-bye.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out. You got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.